Hello, everyone. Welcome. Apologies for the slight delay there. Teams not playing ball with me today, so my apologies for having to be a slight delay in the starting of this meeting. But welcome. Hopefully, everyone can hear me okay, and potentially can also see me as well. So, welcome to the first of our weekly fabric webinars. We're going to be kicking off today with a short 30-minute webinar around the world of Microsoft Fabric, which obviously, if you were following the news recently, went into GA, general availability, mid last month on the 15th of November. We were out in the US in Seattle ourselves at the PASS Data Summit Conference, and there was also the Ignite Conference running at the same time that week. And they announced the general availability of that service on the Wednesday, the 15th. So we were out there for that. We were, in fact, actually going to be exhibiting at the PASS conference, and we were introducing what would be the kind of to the audience, the fabric workshops that we're going to be launching and starting from January next year. We're going to explain a little bit more about that shortly for you. But welcome to this webinar. So what I'm going to do here is a very similar session I did, which is a short 20-something odd minute session. And then I'll take some questions, etc., that I did at the Microsoft Build AI in London recently, about a month or so ago. And I did a kind of intro to Fabric and what Fabric is all about here. So let me kind of get that slideshow underway, and I'll present the kind of the essence of what Fabric is, and we can then take some questions. And then on each week going forward, we're going to have more content to share with you, and we're going to be kind of putting additional resources out there for you to get to. But this is ready to go. So let me get that slideshow underway. Let me just go grab it now. 1 second. Let me just grab that one and get the slideshow running. And I just need to then share that screen. So give me a moment to get that in position. Let me just find that screen again. And just to share the window there. Unfortunately, I had this all set up and then it just wouldn't connect when I was in Teams. So I had to kind of restart that service there. But here we go. We can see if I can get the screen to play ball with me for a moment. So let's move that over there. And let me get that screen up in visibility. So give me a moment. It's not playing ball again with me at the moment. Here we go. Okay, so there we go. Right, should be ready to go there. So hopefully you can see the screen in front of you right now, which is the what is Microsoft Fabric. So quick introduction for those who aren't familiar with myself. Neil Hambley. I'm the founder and CEO of Beacon Intelligence and also the Fabric Workshops service that we're going to be running as well. So I've been in the data space for about 25 years, done most of those different jobs, DBAs, developer, architect, consultant, etc. And I spend my days, mostly these days, as a trainer, training people on those technologies, but I do consulting and projects around those technologies as well. So I keep my hands on as all the time. So we're going to be explaining to you what the Fabric service is. So here we go. So just get the cursor to follow. There we go. Oh, too many clicks there. Okay, so Microsoft Fabric, if you're not aware, is kind of a new service that Microsoft are bringing out that's going to provide us with kind of an end-to-end analytics platform. It's a SaaS service, a software as a service. So ultimately up to today, we've been using PaaS, platforms as a service type kind of capabilities. We've got the Synapse kind of data warehouse and data engineering, so pipelines and databases in there. We've got our Power BI, which of course is a kind of an analytic tool, so we can kind of provide us with those analytic kind of reports and analysis. And we've got things like Data Factory to be able to do that processing. So we're bringing these tools together, but we're doing it in a way then that all of those tools can talk to each other and they can talk to the same data set. So we've got a unified analytics platform essentially. So we're going to have something called the One Lake, which is a data lake, ADLS, Azure Data Lake service that's underneath that we're going to then put data into. And from there, we can provision things like our data lakehouse. We can provision our data warehouse. So we have all of these different services, and we'll be able to talk to those data files, but we'll have one copy of it essentially, rather than spending time trying to move copies of data around and provision those and having lots of additional storage requirements. We have one version. Now, the format of that is slightly different in that it's going to be what's called a Delta Parquet file. So we're going to basically give it the capability of being able to be read by any of these services and be able to kind of, talk to that, whether it's a data engineering kind of requirement, whether it's Power BI, whether it's data science or real-time analytics, we're all talking to the same copy of the data. So what we have is essentially a single kind of infrastructure capability where we have a shared kind of capacity of compute. We have shared workspaces. There will be a security level called One Security that's going to be a security layer that sits across that data that we can kind of helpfully implement the security requirements that we need and be able to do that. And that's all inside that one lake. So we have all of these different services from data integration, data engineering, warehouse, data science, etc., to be able to talk to this. And then we got this one common kind of single set of services that we're going to be able to do. So from navigation model in terms of the way that the tooling looks, think about Office 365, when you look at that tool and you look at kind of Word or Excel, etc., you're looking at kind of very similar kind of interface, a ribbon kind of structure on the screen, the actions you take, etc. We have a similar kind of approach now being taken by the different services from Synapse or Power BI or Data Factory. We can see these different experiences as they're referred to. So we'll be able to kind of see what that looks like. We're going to go and explore a few of those very shortly and spend a little bit of time just kind of educating you on what's in there. Now, remember that this is just coming into general availability. So a lot of the features and functionality is going to take a little bit of a moment to kind of be implemented over the next few quarters, Q1, Q2, Q3, etc. in 2024. We're going to see a lot more functionality being added to the current functionality we have now in Q4 for 2003. Of course, we're talking on top of that, things like governance and additional capabilities, which we're going to explore in a moment. So we refer to these different experiences, or personas is another way to refer to them, as the kind of different ones that you would use when you're doing a different type of activity. So if you want to do that visualization, we want to look into the world of Power BI. We want to look at what capabilities that Power BI has within inside of Fabric. So Power BI has been established for a while now. It's one of the market leaders. It's been around for 6 or so years. I've been using it for a long time, and I'm a Power BI kind of a consultant, and we have clients that we work with that are doing Power BI, and we're helping them understand their data states, the analytics of their data, and kind of finding better ways for those to run their business. But of course, to get that data in and out of these different services, we have to have the right tooling. Things like Data Factory will allow us to kind of pick up that data source, do some transformations and preparations, some cleansing on that data, and eventually put it into a format, prepare it ready for us to be able to use in, say, our data warehouse, etc. Of course, once we have it in those services, we may need to do additional kind of engineering. We may need to kind of figure out what we're doing with that data. Do we put in a data warehouse? Are we going to do something like a real-time analytics workload where we need that data really fast in a streaming capacity and be able to do that analysis there and then? So depends on the amount of data and what type of analysis we do. We want to maybe do this analysis in mere seconds potentially, and it could be on large amounts of data, maybe petabytes of data even. Well, this is what we're able to do with these kind of new infrastructural components by having this kind of one lake service, having these Delta Parquet files that we can talk to, and the services are able to kind of compute against that with the right configuration And that's something we can scale. And we also have burstable resources on that. So we can actually kind of go above the level that we're currently kind of provisioned for, and we can burst to a certain kind of higher capacity occasionally to use up that additional kind of bandwidth that we might need at that moment in time. So these are some of the different experiences or personas that we can have. And you can connect to those. You look at the bottom left of your screen there, you'll see there's kind of one that says Microsoft Fabric. Well, when you click on that, it gives you additional resources to select from: Power BI, Data Factory, Real-Time Analytics. And there's a new one called Data Activator even, that's going to allow us to kind of get notified when certain changes happen within that data set. And we're going to be looking at some of those. Some of these features and capabilities are still in preview. So they will be kind of rolling out into GA as we go through the next kind of year or so. So let's look at some of these in a bit more detail. So here's an example of kind of the way that you will see under Data Factory, connecting to that data source and being able to then follow through and do some additional things. So hey, we're maybe copying some data into our data lake. We might be bringing some data in from our CRM system, or data coming in from one of the kind of the imports that being passed to us. So we have some data coming from other databases, etc. You think about all the different data sources out there. There's a large number, probably 100 plus, that you might be figuring out. And we use Power Query with the scale of Data Factory to connect to our on-prem or cloud service or even third-party services to get that data and to ingest it. And we will be able to kind of build out that. And you think about all the different data sources out and different services out there. There's usually a connector for it, or we can kind of get it into a place where we can leverage one of those connectors there. Here we can see a couple of examples of some open source data sets as well, like the COVID data lake, the NYC taxi data set, the diabetes data set, etc. Now, unless you've kind of been not that familiar with it, one of the key things we're seeing a lot of is people doing additional kind of processing using a notebook. So an Apache Spark based platform to take that data and process it through a notebook and get it into the right scale and format that we need. And we can see some examples of this. And additionally, we have some kind of graphing capabilities built into that service as well. And we can kind of leverage the extensive array of libraries in the PySpark kind of infrastructure. So we can kind of go and get some Python code, we can write some of that, and we can do a whole bunch of stuff. We can even write T-SQL and run that SQL code in there as well. So examples kind of are being shown here on the screen around not only Python, but we have a SQL endpoint that comes with our Lakehouse that we are allowed to kind of then run our SQL queries. So I come from a SQL Server background, working with SQL Server from versions like version 7, way back in the late 1990s. I think 1998 was probably the first time I really touched the SQL Server kind of system, and that was a 6.5. And I've gone through all those versions up into including SQL 2022. You can see kind of the shirt I'm wearing right now. So I'm very familiar with writing T-SQL. I've helped kind of do a lot of SQL queries over the time and taught people about how to write performant SQL queries as well. But we have the ability now to kind of really leverage some of those capabilities in our query model inside of there. And we can go into that Explorer and we can write our queries there and then inside of that native interface, inside of our Fabric environment, essentially. So app.fabric.com, and we're connecting to that service. We have the data and query and model available to us to look at that. Now, when we talk about data sets, which is kind of pretty much the underlying kind of asset that we're looking at, there's a lot of information we need to understand. And sometimes it's been kind of a bit of a work to try and figure out where and when that data set exists, how much data is in there, when it was last refreshed, what information we have, and break down the profiling essentially of that data. You can see here that we have more information against that database and those tables with inside that database that we can look at here. And then we can even look at kind of some of the queries and break it down by who and when are those queries being run. So we got some kind of insight information being provided to us by the interface natively as that. And not only that, it's performance tuned for us on our behalf as well. So a lot of that kind of management of the performance is taken care of us by Fabric to some degree. It's not everything, but there's a good amount of it being done, and we will have large amounts of data, whether that's batch data, micro batch, or streaming data coming into that service. So you see that we have a lot of different information that we can see, and we can go and analyze those queries and figure out who and when is doing that analysis for us. One of the key things that you will find is your estate, your data could be used in many different ways. And one of those ways could be a data science kind of scenario where we're going to take that data and we're going to need to create a model and train that model and be able to do data science on that, machine learning models. And here you can see that we're actually taking some examples of that, where we're going to run a specific type of classifier on that data and create our model, and then be able to fit that model and kind of get it kind of ready for our specific purpose. And then we can even kind of productionize that and containerize it and kind of put it out there ready for use by our service. So from data science, machine learning models, to data engineering, data warehousing for those big data queries, connecting things like Power BI to that service, having data fabric kind of provide all of that kind of infrastructure for us. And we can just kind of switch between these different environments very, very easily. And that's an amazing way of kind of being very productive with our data, but also kind of removing those boundaries of collaboration that we previously probably had and that were challenging, especially if your data was in many different locations. One of the key features that we have in OneLake is something called shortcuts. You may be aware about that, where we can actually kind of say, this is where my data is, and it's maybe on-prem, it could be in a different, even a different cloud provider like AWS, for example. We have maybe the S3 bucket, and we've got some data in there. There's more different connectors coming. I think we've got Google kind of coming along at some point, but at the moment we've got basically kind of ADLS, and we've got the kind of the what was it, AWS and the kind of data lake services right now. We can connect to data in many different locations, for example. This is one of my favorite ones, the world of Power BI. So I've spent a great deal of time kind of doing Power BI. I've helped with the certification track in history when that first came out, the PL300, sorry, the DA100 that became the PL300. When that first came out, I was helping Microsoft with what was in the scope of that certification. And I spend probably every single day doing something around Power BI. I was doing some development this morning, and I've spoken to 2 clients today already on new projects around Power BI. It's an amazing product. It's kind of front and center inside of our data fabric. So additional capabilities are being kind of introduced all the time. We've got additional Copilot services coming into the Fabric service for Power BI, where we have DAX essentially being developed and created for us a lot easier. So we're going to be able to kind of unlock some of those additional insights and help us build those reports, build that analysis with AI assisted features here. We've got some of that you can see kind of on the right hand side there being showcased for Copilot. If you've not had a time to play with that yet, it's an amazing tool. There will be some limitations at the moment. So some of the kind of environments that you actually are deploying in need to be certain workspaces like Fabric workspaces or the actual premium workspace, not the PPU. And some of these, but some of these limitations will be removed over time. But we have some ability to check out what's possible with the trial, the 60-day trial that you have available to you with the Fabric service as well. So think about all of that AI assisted capabilities that are going to be kind of brought to you with kind of the GPT based features that we ship in Power BI, with the natural language DAX kind of capabilities, natural language prompts, for example, where you can just start typing the question you want without having to think about the data model so much, and then they kind of help you bring that and even build those reports for you very kind of off the cuff straight away, and then you can maybe evolve that to a version that you want it to look like. But it can actually start building those reports really quickly and give you that productivity, and your user base, your customers, your people who are using that data don't have to be experts in every kind of data element. They can just kind of ask the question essentially, and that's the premise of what we're trying to do with this, is that we're giving you assisted capabilities with AI to build out those kind of services and to make it easy to consume and build with these capabilities here. So underpinning all of this is our OneLake storage kind of infrastructure, where we have a single place to place our data. Then we can kind of have that single version of truth. We can have a single kind of place where we actually put our, information protection. We put our sensitivity labels on that. We have our lineage. What about personal identification, identifiable information, PII data? Where is that? What about the governance? So all of that's going to be a lot easier to do when we have a single place to kind of consume that. So we're kind of removing those silos, and we're giving you the ability to have a more unified infrastructure using a SaaS service where you don't have to worry about too much about where you're placing the data, how much I provision it, what performance characteristics does it need to have, because they're going to take care of some of those elements for you. Okay, so that's going to be something we can do with the OneLake service, and that's where we put our storage. So lots of new capabilities built in there. And you can see here, as we kind of talk to that service, each of those different individual services are being able to kind of communicate with that single version. And that's the Delta Parquet. If you're not familiar with that, it's a highly compressed, very useful format that's going to have some time travel capabilities. So we can actually kind of see what the version of that data was at a certain time, etc. But to underpin all of this, we have not only the compute, but we have a kind of a collaborative kind of universal compute. So you don't have to worry about kind of running a different Spark cluster here or a different SQL kind of engine there, and which ones. We're going to kind of have this optimized compute engines that can directly access this data. It doesn't need to have kind of a lot of kind of processing kind of ahead of time. We don't take 10 minutes to spin up a cluster and then run a query. We can have that in mere seconds, and kind of they've improved the performance of the capacity and scalability of that service. And not only that, we've got a larger array of different languages that we can talk to. So T-SQL, of course, our Spark for kind of our kind of engines for all those Spark kind of computes that we want to do. We have Gusto query language, the KQL, for that kind of more log analytics and kind of information that we're going to do telemetry type data. And of course, we've got our analysis services for like those Power BI reports and KPIs. So all of these will interact with that Delta Parquet and that single version of truth in that OneLake storage. So we have a nice way of being able to communicate with all of these services. And whether we're talking about something in the finance services, or we have maybe our CRM, our customer 360 type services, we have additional telemetry data from logs and service alert, etc. And we've got our KPIs, which are very critical to understanding how our business is doing and whether we need to do things differently or improve or take opportunities where they exist. But all of these are going to be talking to that same layer. So across all of that, we have a kind of single one security model, and we will have a different way of also kind of going about looking at compliance with our kind of our Purview service as well. But here we can see we've got one security being applied across all of those. And then we can also, you can see here, we can actually talk to each other in turn. So I don't need to have all my data in a single service. I can have my data kind of in these different kind of, locations inside of my OneLake, and then that finance can talk to my customers or can talk to my service telemetry data. And then I've got my data spread across all of these different locations, whether it's something in Azure, it could be that it's in another service called Amazon Web Service, AWS. It could be in the Google Cloud Service. So regardless of where your data actually sits, OneLake can kind of connect to it and can use it and consume it. And the performance of that is remarkable in some of the capabilities. You'd be amazed at how fast this thing can run. So what that really means is we've got the capability now, the infrastructure, the service to be able to empower our users to do what they need. And where do they want to do it? They want to do it in the tools they're familiar with, like Office 365. So we can go in and we can have things like Power BI, we can have our different workbooks, we've got Analyze and Excel capabilities. Everyone wants to know, how do I export to Excel? Well, you know what? We can actually do that integration with the Analyze and Excel straight inside of the product here. So we get that capability. You can embed that report in something like Teams, for example. You're going to have that report kind of shared and ready to go inside of your Teams channel. So there's lots of capabilities here, and additional things like sensitivity and security labels will go along with that data. So if you have some very kind of sensitive data and some data that needs to be protected in a certain way, we have that, and it kind of goes along with what we're doing here. Okay. So there's a lot more kind of to this, obviously, than what we're showing you right now. We're giving you kind of that quick user tour. And of course, we talked about governance and security. So regulatory compliance kind of has become more and more important over the last few years. Things like GDPR for the European Union and all these different other services. And you can imagine there's a vast array of different standards that we need to be there on. And security is paramount to get it right, to have that virtual network very secure, have private link and private endpoints for us to use in our virtual networks. So we have all of that capability built into this service. And we can kind of make it easier to turn on those services and make those available for us to can do that. And then that access plane needs to be kind of very secure, and we need to be able to go say who can do what, which groups and which services. So all of this then can be controlled a little bit with our different kind of services, connecting to different dashboards, different reports, and kind of going into other services and kind of the whole flow of where that is. We can see that lineage, we can see that access, we can manage it all at a single central place. So we can secure that service very, very good. So this is some of the capabilities that this service has. Clearly, obviously, we haven't got all the time in the world to show you everything today, but we do have some new resources. I'm just going to go and spend just a moment just to quickly show you that. Give me a second. I'm just going to bring up the next one. So give me a moment just to load this. So we have our Discover Fabric workshop that we are going to be making you aware of. Here's a quick list of the modules in that workshop that we are launching. The first date start in January, and we're going to be running this 2-day workshop in the dates that you'll see in here for Q1 of 2024. Whether you're in the US or based in Europe, we have kind of different time zones there. The instructors will be people like myself and some of my other MVP folks. And we're making it extremely affordable. You can either buy a single workshop, or you can become part of our subscription plan, where you actually get access to all the workshops that we are going to be running, and you can have a monthly or yearly kind of subscription here. And if you're not familiar with kind of we do have a video that for some reason it doesn't play when I'm doing the screen real estate. I haven't figured out how to fix that yet. But we'll give you a link to what that is in our follow-up email. So thank you for joining us today. I know this has been a quick kind of 30-minute tour. We have a couple of minutes left in our schedule for any questions. So I'm just going to go back to this and actually just grab this one moment. I'm just going to make it available for everyone to unmute. So give me a moment. I just need to turn on that capability. see if I can just do that. Going to allow mics on everyone, and we will kind of then, let me just kind of just allow mic. For some reason, I'm presuming I can't do it as a group thing, so I have to do them individually. And one more to do. There we go. So if you have any questions, please feel free to do unmute and give me your question, or just put it into the chat window and we can answer it there. But thank you for joining us today. Hopefully you have found this useful. We will be doing this on a weekly basis going forward. We've got next week and the week after, and then after that, we will be doing them from the new year. But I'll give you the schedule via an email at some point. So thank you for being here with us for our first webinar, and we'll see you on the next one. If you have any questions, do let us know right now. Thank you. Okay, I'm going to stop the recording, folks, and the recording will be available